Hi everyone, welcome back. If you're seeking calm, deep rest, and peaceful sleep, you're in the right place. Let's begin.
Tonight, we will walk a path that leads not away from life's challenges, but into a different relationship with them. We will explore the ancient wisdom of Zen Buddhism, teachings that have shown countless beings how to find peace, not by controlling life, but by learning to flow with it. You will discover the natural ease that emerges when you stop pushing against the current of existence. We will journey together through timeless stories and simple truths that speak not to the restless mind seeking solutions, but to the wise heart that already knows how to rest. We will learn to see resistance not as strength, but as unnecessary struggle, and our difficulties not as enemies to defeat, but as teachers offering the gift of surrender. Welcome to Sleepy Monk. This is your refuge, a space where you can lay down the weight of trying to make life conform to your wishes. There is nothing here to accomplish, no problem to solve, and no version of yourself you need to become. Simply let these words find their way to the places in you that are ready to stop fighting. Our exploration begins with a truth that may surprise the mind accustomed to struggle. The very act of resisting life is what creates most of our suffering. Not life itself, but our quiet, constant pushback against how life unfolds. This resistance is so woven into our daily experience that we rarely notice it. The subtle tension when things don't go as planned, the inner arguing with what is, the exhausting effort to make reality match our preferences. This resistance is not a personal failing or a sign of weakness. It is simply what happens when we forget our true nature, when we believe we are separate from life rather than expressions of it. Tonight, we will gently investigate this unconscious habit, not to judge it, but to understand it with such clarity that it naturally begins to dissolve, like ice melting in the warmth of spring sunshine. In Zen tradition, there's a teaching about water. Water never fights the rocks in the riverbed. It doesn't argue with the mountain that blocks its path. It simply flows, finding its way through the smallest opening, wearing down stone, not through force, but through gentle persistence. Water teaches us that the softest things in the world overcome the hardest. You are like water. Your essential nature is fluid, adaptable, peaceful. But somewhere along the way, you learn to be like ice, rigid, hard, frozen in place by fear and expectations. Tonight, we explore how to melt back into your natural state, not by forcing the ice to break, but by allowing the warmth of awareness to soften what was never meant to be solid. The Buddha taught that all suffering comes from resistance to what is. But Zen takes this teaching deeper. It shows us that the one who resists and the thing being resisted are not two separate things. When you stop fighting life, you discover you are life itself, flowing naturally, peacefully, without opposition. Are you ready to lay down the weapons you've been carrying against your own experience? Are you ready to discover what remains when the fight ends? Let's begin this journey back to your natural state, back to the flowing water of your being. A student once asked the Zen master Joshu, "What is the way?" Joshu replied, ordinary mind is the way. The student persisted. Should I try to direct myself toward it? Joshu answered, if you try to direct yourself toward it, you move away from it. The student was confused. But if I don't try, how can I know the way? Joshu smiled. The way doesn't belong to knowing or not knowing. Knowing is delusion. Not knowing is blankness. When you reach the way beyond doubt, you'll find it as vast and boundless as outer space. How can it be talked about on the level of right and wrong? This ancient exchange reveals the first layer of resistance, the mind's insistence on grasping, directing, controlling the flow of experience. Even in spiritual seeking, we resist by trying to force awakening, by making enlightenment into another goal to achieve, rather than a natural state to recognize. Let yourself notice, without judgment, where resistance lives in your body right now. Is there tension in your jaw from words you didn't speak today? Tightness in your shoulders from burdens you feel you must carry? A knot in your stomach from decisions you're avoiding? These physical contractions are the body's honest response to mental resistance. The body never lies about what you're fighting against. But resistance isn't just physical. Watch how your mind moves when faced with something uncomfortable. Notice how quickly it jumps to, this shouldn't be happening, or, if only this were different, or, I can't handle this. These thoughts appear so automatically that we rarely question them. Yet each one is a small act of violence against reality, a tiny declaration of war against what is. The Zen teacher, Huang Po, taught that most people live in a house of anxiety, constantly repairing the walls, reinforcing the doors, checking the locks. But the house itself is the problem. The walls of resistance that we build to protect ourselves become the very prison that holds us captive. What would happen if you simply walked out of the house? What would happen if you discovered there was never any real danger to protect against? In the silence between your thoughts right now, feel the space that holds both comfort and discomfort without preference. This space doesn't resist anything. It doesn't push away pain or grab for pleasure. It simply allows all experience to arise and pass away like clouds in an empty sky. You are this space. You are this allowing awareness. But somewhere along the way, you forgot and began to identify with the passing clouds instead. Resistance often masquerades as protection. The mind tells you that if you don't push against what's happening, you'll be overwhelmed, hurt, or lost. But this is the fundamental misunderstanding that creates suffering. True protection doesn't come from resistance. It comes from flexibility. The tree that bends in the storm survives while the rigid one breaks. There's a story of a Zen monk who was meditating by a river when a scorpion fell into the water. Without hesitation, the monk reached in to save it, but the scorpion stung him. He pulled back, shook his hand, then reached in again. Again, the scorpion stung him. A passerby saw this and shouted, "Why do you keep trying to save that scorpion? Can't you see it will only hurt you?" The monk replied calmly, "It is the nature of the scorpion to sting. It is my nature to save. Just because the scorpion doesn't change its nature, why should I change mine?" This story reveals a profound truth about resistance. The monk didn't resist the scorpion's nature or his own. He didn't fight against being stung or try to change what couldn't be changed. He simply acted from his true nature, without requiring the world to be different than it is. This is what it means to live without resistance, not passivity, but authentic action that flows from acceptance of what is. Take a moment to breathe into this understanding. Feel how your breath doesn't resist coming or going. It flows naturally, effortlessly, without your conscious control. Your heart beats without resistance. Your blood flows without argument. Your body knows how to live without fighting itself. The resistance exists only in the thinking mind that has forgotten its true nature. Yet resistance has become so habitual that we often don't notice it until it creates obvious suffering. We resist getting older, so we suffer with each birthday. We resist other people's opinions, so we suffer in every disagreement. We resist our own emotions, so we suffer doubly, once from the feeling itself, and again from our fight against it. We resist change, so we suffer through every transition. We resist uncertainty, so we suffer in the space between knowing and not knowing. The irony is that resistance never actually prevents what we're resisting. The aging happens anyway. The opinions persist. The emotions arise. Change continues. Uncertainty remains. All our resistance accomplishes is adding a layer of suffering to what might otherwise be simply part of life's natural flow. Master Dogen, the founder of Soto Zen, taught that enlightenment is not something to be attained, but simply the natural state when delusion drops away. The delusion is the belief that we are separate from life, that we must protect ourselves against it, control it, improve it, or escape from it. But in truth, we are life itself. How can life resist itself without creating suffering? Consider for a moment what would remain if you stopped resisting your experience right now. What would be left if you didn't push away the discomfort, didn't grasp for something better, didn't try to figure it all out? In that space of non-resistance, there's a natural peace that doesn't depend on circumstances being different. It's not the peace of getting what you want, but the peace of not needing anything to be other than what it is. This is why Zen emphasizes just sitting, zazen. Not sitting to achieve something, not sitting to get rid of thoughts or emotions, not sitting to become enlightened, just sitting, just allowing whatever arises to arise without interference. In this simple practice, we learn that our natural state is already peaceful, already whole, already free. The resistance was the only thing blocking our recognition of what was always true. As you settle deeper into rest, notice how resistance often appears in the form of mental commentary. The voice that says, "I should be more relaxed by now," or "this isn't working," or "my mind is too busy." Even these thoughts can be met without resistance. They're just more weather passing through the sky of awareness. You don't have to fight the commentary or believe it. You can simply notice it with the same gentle attention you might give to the sound of distant traffic or rain on the roof. The ancient Zen texts speak of no mind, mushin. This doesn't mean having no thoughts, but rather not being possessed by thoughts, not resisting them or identifying with them. In no mind, thoughts arise and pass away like reflections in still water. The water doesn't resist the reflections or try to hold on to them. It simply reflects perfectly whatever appears, then returns to stillness when the image moves on. Your awareness is like this still water. It has the capacity to reflect any experience: joy, sorrow, fear, love, confusion, clarity, without being disturbed by what it reflects. The disturbance comes only when you forget that you are the water and instead believe you are the reflection. When you remember your true nature as awareness itself, resistance naturally dissolves because there's nothing to protect and no one to do the protecting. There's another story from the Zen tradition about a student who complained to his master that his meditation was terrible, full of distracting thoughts and uncomfortable feelings. The master asked him to bring a glass of muddy water from the garden pond. When the student returned with the murky water, the master said, "Now make the water clear." The student tried stirring it, but it only became muddier. He tried filtering it through the cloth, but particles still remained. Finally, exhausted from his efforts, he simply set the glass down and waited. Slowly, without any intervention, the mud settled to the bottom and the water became perfectly clear. "You see," said the master, "the water clears itself when you stop stirring it up. Your mind is the same way. Stop trying to fix it, improve it, or clear it, and its natural clarity will emerge." This is the essence of non-resistance, trusting the natural process of settling, of clearing, of returning to balance. When you stop stirring up your experience with resistance, when you stop trying to fix what isn't broken, the mind naturally returns to its clear, peaceful state. Feel this settling beginning now as your body relaxes more deeply into rest. Notice how releasing the need to fix or improve this moment allows it to reveal its inherent completeness. The peace you're seeking isn't somewhere else, waiting for you to become worthy of it. It's here, in this very experience, made visible when you stop obscuring it with resistance. The path of Zen is sometimes called the gateless gate. There's nowhere to go because you're already there. Nothing to achieve because you already are what you seek. Nothing to resist because everything is already part of your true self. The gate is gateless because there was never anything to keep you out of your own true nature. The resistance was the only barrier, and it was never real, only a habit of mind that can be gently released. As we move deeper into this exploration, let yourself rest in the understanding that resistance is not your enemy. It's simply a misguided attempt to find safety in an unsafe world. But the safety was never in controlling life. It was always in recognizing yourself as the space in which all of life's experiences can safely arise and pass away. You are the sky, not the weather. You are the ocean, not the waves. You are the awareness, not the content of awareness. And in this recognition, the fight ends. Not because you surrender to defeat, but because you remember there was never anyone to fight and nothing to fight against. There is only this breath, this moment, this perfect, flowing, ever-changing expression of life, being itself. And you are not separate from it. You are it, flowing naturally, without resistance, like water returning to water, like space recognizing itself as space. Rest now in this natural flowing. Let the resistance dissolve like ice melting in warm sunshine. You don't have to make it happen. Just allow the natural warmth of awareness to do what warmth does. Soften what was never meant to be hard. Melt what was never meant to be frozen. Return what was never truly separate back to its natural state of flowing wholeness. When resistance begins to soften, when you stop fighting what is, something becomes clear that was always there beneath the struggle. The Zen masters knew this secret, that acceptance is not a practice you do, but the recognition of what you already are. You are the space that naturally accepts all experience, the awareness that embraces whatever arises without question or condition. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within, do not seek it without." But what he didn't say explicitly, what Zen reveals through direct pointing, is that this inner peace is not something you create through acceptance. It's something you uncover by ceasing to create resistance. Like the moon that appears when clouds move away, your peaceful nature emerges when the clouds of fighting reality dissolve. Feel this truth settling into your body now as you rest. Notice how your breath accepts each moment without argument. Your lungs don't resist the air that enters, don't cling to the air that leaves. There's a wisdom in this natural rhythm that your thinking mind has forgotten, but your body remembers perfectly. Each exhale is a small letting go, each inhale a gentle receiving, and neither fights the other. This is what real acceptance looks like. Not grim resignation or passive submission, but the alive recognition that fighting the flow of life is like trying to make water flow uphill. It can be done with enormous effort, but it goes against the natural way of things. And in this struggle against nature, we exhaust ourselves for no reason. There's a story of two Zen monks walking through a forest when they came to a river swollen by recent rains. Standing at the bank was a beautiful woman in fine clothes, afraid to cross because the current was strong and she would surely ruin her garments. The elder monk, without hesitation, picked her up and carried her across. He set her down on the other side, and she thanked him and went on her way. The two monks continued walking in silence. After several hours, the younger monk could no longer contain himself. "Brother," he said, "we have taken vows not to touch women, yet you carried that woman across the river." The elder monk smiled gently and replied, "I left that woman at the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story shows the difference between natural response and mental resistance. The elder monk saw what was needed and acted without internal conflict. He didn't resist his vows, nor did he resist the woman's need. He responded to what was present, then let it go completely. The younger monk, however, carried the experience for hours, creating suffering through his mental resistance to what had already happened. Your mind may be like the younger monk right now, carrying experiences from today, yesterday, even years past, replaying moments when life didn't go according to plan. But acceptance invites you to set down these burdens, not because the experiences weren't real or important, but because carrying them serves no purpose. The woman reached her destination long ago. Why are you still standing at that riverbank? As your body settles deeper into rest, you might notice how acceptance actually feels in your muscles, your nervous system, your breath. There's a letting go that happens when you stop bracing against what is. Your shoulders can finally drop. Your jaw can unclench from holding back words that don't need to be said. Your heart can slow from the racing pace of trying to outrun reality. This physical relaxation isn't separate from spiritual understanding. It's the same thing experienced differently. When the Buddha taught about suffering and the end of suffering, He wasn't speaking in abstractions. He was pointing to the actual, lived experience of tension and release, of fighting and flowing, of resistance and acceptance that happens in your body right here, right now. But acceptance often seems difficult because we misunderstand what it means. The mind thinks acceptance means approving of everything, becoming passive, or losing the ability to change what needs changing. Master Dogen taught otherwise. He said, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This isn't contradiction, it's the paradox of acceptance. You can fully embrace what is while still participating in the natural flow of change and growth. Think of a river accepting the rocks in its bed. The water doesn't approve of the rocks or disapprove of them. It doesn't try to move them all at once, nor does it give up and stop flowing. It simply flows around them, and over time, with gentle persistence, it shapes them. The river's acceptance allows it to accomplish what force never could. You can learn the same flowing around the rocks in your path. The difficult emotions, the challenging people, the circumstances you didn't choose. Acceptance gives you the flexibility to find your way through anything without destroying yourself in the process. This is especially important as you prepare for sleep, because fighting your thoughts, your worries, your restlessness only makes them stronger. But accepting their presence, allowing them to be there without engaging, lets them naturally settle and fade. There was once a student who complained to his Zen master that he couldn't stop thinking during meditation. "These thoughts keep coming," he said, "and I can't make them stop." The master asked him to try not to think of a white elephant. Of course, the moment he tried not to think of it, the white elephant was all he could see. "You see," said the master, "the harder you try not to think something, the more power you give it. But if I simply tell you to think of a white elephant, you can do so briefly, then let the thought go naturally when your attention moves elsewhere." This teaching holds the key to both meditation and peaceful sleep. When you lie down at night and unwanted thoughts arise, worries about tomorrow, regrets about today, endless mental chatter, your instinct might be to push them away. But this pushing creates the very tension that keeps you awake. Instead, you can practice acceptance. Notice the thoughts without judgment. Acknowledge their presence without fighting them, and return your attention gently to your breath or body. In this acceptance, they lose their grip and naturally fade away. The Zen master Huang Po taught, "The foolish reject what they see, not what they think. The wise reject what they think, not what they see." This points to a profound shift in how we relate to our inner experience. When difficult emotions arise, sadness, fear, anger, loneliness, we often try to reject the feeling itself. We want it gone. But what if the feeling isn't the problem? What if the problem is our thoughts about the feeling, our resistance to it, our stories about what it means? Imagine you're lying in bed and anxiety arises about something happening tomorrow. The anxiety itself is just energy moving through your body. Perhaps a racing heart, tight chest, restless thoughts. This energy has a natural lifespan, like a wave that rises and falls. But when you resist it, when you tell yourself, "I shouldn't feel anxious," or "This is terrible," or "I'll never fall asleep feeling like this," you add mental fuel to the emotional fire. The original anxiety might last a few minutes, but your thoughts about it can keep you awake for hours. Acceptance changes this completely. When anxiety arises, you can meet it with curiosity rather than resistance. Oh, anxiety is here. I can feel it in my chest, in my thoughts. This is what anxiety feels like in this moment. You're not approving of the anxiety or inviting it to stay forever. You're simply acknowledging what is actually happening without adding the extra layer of resistance that creates suffering. The Buddha compared the mind to a wild monkey, jumping from branch to branch, never still. But he also taught that this monkey nature isn't the problem. Trying to cage the monkey is. Acceptance means letting the monkey be a monkey while recognizing that you are not the monkey. You are the space in which the monkey plays, the awareness that observes its activity without being disturbed by it. This understanding can transform your relationship with sleeplessness itself. How many nights have you lain awake frustrated that you couldn't fall asleep, worried about being tired tomorrow, angry at your mind for being active when you want it quiet? This resistance to sleeplessness creates a double suffering. The original wakefulness plus the struggle against it. But what happens when you accept that this might be a wakeful night? When you stop demanding that sleep come on your schedule? Often, paradoxically, this acceptance of wakefulness allows sleep to arrive naturally. When you're no longer fighting being awake, when you can lie peacefully in bed without the urgent need for unconsciousness, your nervous system relaxes. The very peace you find in accepting wakefulness creates the conditions for sleep to emerge spontaneously. There's a beautiful teaching from the Zen tradition about a master who was asked, "What is Buddha?" He replied, 3 pounds of flax. The student was confused by this seemingly mundane answer, but the master was pointing to something profound. Buddha nature, your enlightened, peaceful, accepting nature, isn't found in some special spiritual experience. It's here, in the most ordinary moments, in the simple acceptance of what is right in front of you. Right now, your Buddha nature is accepting the weight of your body against the bed, the temperature of the air on your skin, the sounds around you, the thoughts in your mind. It's not trying to improve any of it or push any of it away. This natural accepting awareness is always present, always peaceful, always enough. When you recognize yourself as this acceptance rather than as the one who struggles against experience, peace is immediate and effortless. Master Linji taught, "There is nothing special to do. Just be ordinary. Relieve yourself, wash your face, put on your clothes, and eat your food. When tired, sleep." This ordinariness is the heart of acceptance. Sleep when tired, eat when hungry, rest when rest is needed. Feel what you feel without making it into a spiritual problem to be solved. But the mind wants to complicate the simplicity. It wants to analyze why you're tired, whether you should be tired, how to optimize your tiredness. It creates stories about your emotions, judgments about your thoughts, resistance to your natural rhythms. Acceptance cuts through all of this mental elaboration and returns you to what's actually happening. You're tired. Your body wants to rest. This is enough information. Sometimes acceptance means letting go of the day's events that your mind wants to rehash endlessly. The conversation that didn't go well, the decision you're second-guessing, the person who misunderstood you. These mental movies play on repeat, keeping you wired when your body is ready for rest. But each replay is a form of resistance to the fact that the day is over, that the events already happened. that rehashing them changes nothing. Acceptance means allowing the day to be complete as it is. The successes and mistakes, the moments of clarity and confusion, the times you were kind and the times you fell short, all of it can be acknowledged and released, not because it doesn't matter, but because holding on to it serves no purpose now. The day has taught you what it came to teach. Now you can let it rest. There's a Zen saying, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." But tonight, as you settle into sleep, perhaps the focus can be on the first part. You are perfect as you are. Perfect not in the sense of flawless, but in the sense of complete, whole, enough exactly as you find yourself in this moment. The improvement can wait until tomorrow. Right now, there is only this breath, this body, this moment of rest. This acceptance doesn't make you passive or resigned. It makes you available to respond wisely rather than react blindly. When you stop fighting what is, you can see clearly what needs attention and what needs to be left alone. You can act from peace rather than panic, from love rather than fear, from wisdom rather than reactivity. As sleep approaches, this wisdom translates into letting your body do what it knows how to do. Your heart knows how to beat without your supervision. Your breath knows how to flow without your management. Your mind knows how to quiet itself when you stop trying to force silence. Trust this natural intelligence. Accept that your body-mind system has evolved over millions of years to know how to rest and restore itself. The deepest acceptance is accepting yourself as you are right now. Not the self you think you should be, not the self you were yesterday or hope to be tomorrow, but this self, here, now, with all its imperfections and beauty. This self that has carried you through every challenge you've ever faced. This self that deserves rest, peace, and gentle loving kindness. Let this acceptance wash through you now like warm water, softening any remaining tension, dissolving any lingering resistance. You don't have to be different to deserve peace. You don't have to solve all your problems to merit rest. You don't have to understand everything to be worthy of sleep. You are already worthy, already whole, already home in this moment of accepting what is. When you accept what is, when you stop fighting this moment, something remarkable happens. You begin to notice that this moment itself never stays the same. Your breath changes from inhale to exhale. Your thoughts arise and dissolve. Sounds come and go. Even your body shifts and settles continuously. Everything is moving, flowing, transforming, and you are part of this endless dance of change. The Buddha's very first teaching after his awakening was about impermanence. All conditioned things are impermanent, he said. Work out your salvation with diligence. But the Zen tradition takes this further, showing us that impermanence isn't something to endure or transcend. It's the very nature of freedom itself. When you stop trying to make permanent what is naturally flowing, you discover the peace that exists within change itself. Right now, as you rest, your body is demonstrating this truth perfectly. Your heartbeat changes with each breath. Your muscle tension releases in waves. Your mind moves from thought to thought, like a river flowing over rocks. Nothing stays exactly the same for even a moment, and this constant change is not chaos. It's the intelligent dance of life renewing itself endlessly. There was once a student who asked Master Joshu, "What is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West?" A classic Zen question about the deepest truth. Joshu replied, "The oak tree in the garden." The student was confused and pressed him, "Don't teach me by means of objects." Joshu said, "I am not teaching you by means of objects." "Then what is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West?" "The oak tree in the garden." This exchange points to something profound about impermanence. The oak tree is never the same tree from moment to moment. Its leaves grow and fall. Its bark changes. Its roots extend. Its shape shifts with each season. Yet it's completely itself in each moment of transformation. The tree doesn't resist spring or cling to summer. It doesn't fight autumn or fear winter. It flows with the seasons, and in this flowing, it expresses its deepest nature. You are like this tree, not the fixed, solid self you sometimes imagine yourself to be, but a flowing process of becoming, always changing, yet somehow always authentically you. The resistance comes when you try to freeze yourself in place, when you cling to who you were yesterday or demand guarantees about who you'll be tomorrow. But your true nature, like the tree, is found in the flowing itself. This understanding brings tremendous relief, especially as you prepare for sleep. How much energy do you spend each day trying to maintain consistency, trying to be the same person you were this morning, trying to hold your mood steady, your thoughts organized, your life predictable? It's exhausting because it goes against the natural flow of change that wants to move through you. But when you allow yourself to flow with impermanence, when you stop trying to control your internal weather, something beautiful happens. You might feel sad for a few moments, and then notice joy arising. You might feel restless, then suddenly peaceful. You might have busy thoughts, then find your mind naturally settling into stillness. Each state arises and passes away like clouds in the sky, and you don't have to do anything to manage this process. You simply let it flow. The Zen master Dogen wrote about being time, the understanding that you are not separate from time, but are the very process of temporal unfolding itself. Each moment you experience is both completely new and completely you. The you of this breath is slightly different from the you of the last breath, yet both are equally authentic expressions of your deepest nature. This might sound abstract, but you can feel it directly in your body right now. Notice how your physical sensations are constantly shifting. Perhaps your left foot feels different than your right. Maybe there's a warmth here, a coolness there. These sensations arise and change without your permission or control, and this changing itself is the aliveness you call your body. When you try to fix these sensations, to make them permanent or push them away, you create tension. But when you let them flow naturally, you feel more alive, more present, more at peace. There's a story of a Zen monk who was dying. His students gathered around, deeply sad about losing their beloved teacher. Seeing their grief, the old monk laughed gently. "Why are you crying?" he asked. "I have been dying since the moment I was born. Every breath has been practice for this letting go. Now I simply take the next step in a dance I've been dancing my whole life. This monk understood something that brings profound peace. That death is not the opposite of life, but its natural completion. And if death is natural, then all the smaller deaths that happen throughout each day are natural too. The end of childhood, the end of relationships, the end of dreams that don't manifest, the end of each phase of life, even the end of each day as you surrender to sleep. Sleep itself is a beautiful teaching about impermanence. Each night you practice letting go of the day's identity, releasing your grip on thoughts and concerns, allowing consciousness to dissolve into something deeper. You don't know exactly when sleep will come or what dreams might arise. You surrender to a process beyond your control, and in that surrender, you find rest. But often we resist this nightly practice of letting go. We try to take the day's worries to bed with us. We replay conversations, plan tomorrow's activities, hold on to the day's tensions in our muscles. This resistance to sleep's invitation to let go keeps us awake and restless. What if you could approach sleep as the monks approached death, as a natural completion, a graceful letting go, a next step in the dance of existence? Master Ikkyu, a wild and unconventional Zen poet, wrote, "Having nothing, nothing can be lost." This points to the ultimate freedom found in embracing impermanence. When you truly understand that nothing can be permanently held onto, not your youth, not your relationships, not your achievements, not even your problems, then you stop living in the exhausting grip of trying to maintain and control everything. Instead, you learn to love things precisely because they are temporary. The cherry blossom is beautiful, not despite its brief blooming, but because of it. If cherry blossoms lasted forever, would we pause in such wonder to appreciate them? Their fleeting nature makes each moment of their flowering precious. Your life, your experiences, your very breath carry this same preciousness because they too are temporary, unrepeatable, here now and then transformed. You might notice resistance arising to this teaching about impermanence. The mind wants guarantees, permanence, something solid to hold on to. But this very desire for permanence is what creates suffering. It's like trying to cup water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. But when you hold your hands gently, cupped but relaxed, the water can rest there peacefully for a time before naturally flowing onward. Let yourself practice this gentle holding right now with whatever arises in your awareness. If anxiety comes, hold it lightly, knowing it will pass. If peace comes, receive it gratefully, knowing it too will transform. If thoughts come, let them move through like fish swimming through clear water. Nothing needs to be grasped or pushed away. Everything is flowing naturally, and you are the space in which this flowing happens. There's a beautiful Zen teaching story about a master who was asked what happens after death. Instead of answering with doctrine or philosophy, he said, "I don't know." His student was shocked. "But Master, you are enlightened. Surely you must know what happens after death." The master smiled and said, "Yes, I am enlightened. That's why I know that I don't know." This not knowing is not ignorance. It's wisdom. It's the recognition that life is constantly creating itself anew in ways that cannot be predicted or controlled. Your next breath, your next thought, your next experience, all arising fresh from the mystery of this moment. When you stop demanding to know what's coming next, when you stop trying to manage the unknown future, you can rest more deeply in the present. This is especially important as you settle into sleep. The mind often stays active because it's trying to solve tomorrow today, trying to figure out all the unknowns, trying to control what cannot be controlled. But sleep is an invitation into not knowing, into trusting the unknown, into surrendering to the mystery of rest and restoration. The Tao Te Ching teaches that the softest things in the world overcome the hardest. Water shapes rock, not through force, but through gentle persistence. Your breath shapes your body, not by pushing, but by rhythmic flowing. In the same way, when you flow with life's changes rather than resist them, you become like water, soft yet powerful, yielding yet unstoppable. You can feel this power in your own experience of change. Think of a difficult period you've lived through, perhaps grief, illness, heartbreak, or failure. At the time, it might have felt permanent, overwhelming, impossible to survive. Yet here you are, having flowed through that experience and emerged changed by it. You didn't overcome it through force. You survived it by continuing to breathe, to live, to flow with what was happening, even when you couldn't understand it. This same flowing is available to you right now, with whatever challenges you're carrying, the work stress, the relationship difficulties, the health concerns, the financial worries. All of these are also temporary, also flowing, also part of the larger dance of change that is your life. They don't need to be solved tonight. They don't need to be carried in your muscles as you rest. Like clouds passing through the sky, they can be acknowledged and allowed to move through your awareness without taking up residence there. Master Bankei taught about the unborn Buddha mind, the awareness that was never born and can never die, the space in which all experiences arise and pass away. This awareness doesn't change even as everything within it changes constantly. You might think of it as the screen on which movies play. The screen itself is unaffected by whether the movie is comedy or tragedy, action or romance. It simply allows all experiences to display themselves without being changed by their content. You have access to this unchanging awareness right now, even as your body shifts, your breath flows, and your thoughts arise and dissolve. This awareness doesn't resist impermanence. It makes impermanence possible by providing the space in which change can happen. When you rest in this awareness, instead of identifying with the changing contents, you find a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances remaining the same. This shift in identification, from the waves to the ocean, from the thoughts to the awareness of thoughts, from the changing to the unchanging space that allows change, is perhaps the most profound transformation possible. And it doesn't require years of practice or spiritual achievement. It's available in any moment when you stop trying to control the flow and instead recognize yourself as the space in which the flow happens. Feel this spaciousness now as your body prepares for sleep. You are not just the physical sensations that arise and change. You are the awareness that knows these sensations. You are not just the thoughts that come and go. You are the space in which thoughts appear and dissolve. You are not just the emotions that flow through you. You are the peace that remains present through all emotional weather. This recognition doesn't make you detached or disconnected from life. Instead, it allows you to participate more fully in life's flowing dance because you're no longer afraid of the dance's constant changes. You can love completely because you're not trying to make love permanent. You can engage fully because you're not attached to specific outcomes. You can rest deeply because you're not resisting the natural cycles of activity and stillness. The seasons teach us this wisdom naturally. Spring doesn't try to hold on to winter or rush towards summer. It simply expresses spring fully, completely, without reservation. Summer doesn't resist autumn's approach. It gives everything to being summer until it's time to transform. Autumn doesn't cling to its leaves or fight the coming winter. It lets go beautifully, gracefully, knowing that this release is part of the larger rhythm of renewal. You too are part of this seasonal wisdom. You have times of growth and times of rest, times of activity and times of stillness, times of clarity and times of confusion. Each phase has its own gifts, its own teachings, its own place in the larger cycle of your becoming. When you stop resisting your current season and instead learn to inhabit it fully, you find that each phase of life has its own completeness, its own beauty, its own peace. As you prepare for the nightly season of sleep, let yourself appreciate this natural rhythm. Your body knows how to move from wakefulness to rest, from activity to stillness, from the day's engagement to the night's restoration. You don't have to manage this transition or force it to happen. You simply allow your natural rhythms to carry you, like a leaf carried by wind, with no resistance to where the flowing takes you. This trust in natural process, this willingness to flow with, rather than fight against life's constant changes, is the deepest wisdom of impermanence. It's not that everything changes, it's that you are the changing itself, the flowing itself, the dancing itself. And in this recognition, resistance dissolves naturally, not because you force it away, but because there's no longer anyone there to resist. There's just the flowing and the peace that flows with it, carrying you now into whatever arises next. As you rest in the flowing nature of impermanence, as you stop trying to hold on to what naturally changes, something tender begins to emerge. When you're no longer fighting against the river of experience, when you're no longer exhausting yourself trying to control what cannot be controlled, you discover that your natural response to life is not hardness, but softness, not aggression, but gentleness, not resistance, but compassion. This compassion isn't something you have to manufacture or force. It arises naturally when the barriers of resistance come down. Like a spring that bubbles up from underground when the rocks blocking its path are removed, compassion flows effortlessly when you stop fighting what is. And this flowing compassion changes everything. How you meet your own struggles, how you respond to others' pain, how you move through a world that often seems harsh and demanding. The Buddha taught that all beings want to be happy and free from suffering, yet somehow we've learned to meet suffering with more suffering, pain with more pain, difficulty with resistance that only makes things more difficult. But there's another way, a path that the great Zen masters walked, meeting every experience, even the painful ones, with the same tenderness you might offer a frightened child or an injured animal. Right now, as your body settles and your breath naturally slows, notice if there are any places where you're being harsh with yourself. Perhaps you're judging your restless thoughts or criticizing your inability to relax completely. Maybe you're carrying guilt about something that happened today, or anxiety about tomorrow. These inner voices of criticism and worry are forms of self-violence, ways you resist your own human experience. What would it feel like to speak to yourself right now, the way you would speak to your dearest friend who was struggling? What would it sound like to offer yourself the same patience and understanding you would naturally give to someone you love who is having a difficult time sleeping? This shift from self-resistance to self-compassion isn't just kindness, it's wisdom. It recognizes that fighting yourself is like trying to wrestle with your own shadow. There once was a student who went to a Zen master complaining bitterly about his meditation practice. "I sit every day," he said, "but my mind is full of distracting thoughts. I get angry at my wandering attention. I fall asleep. I fidget constantly. I'm the worst meditator who ever lived." The master listened patiently, then asked, "When you have a guest in your home who is tired and troubled, do you yell at them and demand they be different?" "Of course not," the student replied. "I would offer them tea, make them comfortable, listen to their troubles with kindness." The master smiled. "Then why do you not treat your own mind as kindly as you would treat a troubled guest?" This story points to the heart of compassionate non-resistance. Your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations are like guests visiting the space of your awareness. Some guests are pleasant, peaceful thoughts, comfortable feelings, ease in the body. Others are more challenging, worry, sadness, tension, restlessness. But whether the guests are welcome or unwelcome, the host remains kind, spacious, accepting. The space of your awareness has room for all visitors, and it meets each one with the same gentle hospitality. This doesn't mean you have to like every experience or invite difficult states to stay longer. It means you stop fighting with what's already here. If anxiety is present, you don't have to welcome anxiety, but you can welcome yourself, the one who is experiencing anxiety, with compassion. You can hold yourself gently in the midst of whatever is arising, the way a loving parent holds a child who is scared or upset. Feel this quality of gentle holding available to you right now. Whatever you're experiencing, peace or restlessness, clarity or confusion, comfort or discomfort, can be held in the same tender awareness. Your breath continues to flow in and out, regardless of what you're feeling. Your heart continues to beat, whether your thoughts are calm or busy. There's something in you that remains steady and caring through all the changing weather of experience. This steady compassion becomes especially important when dealing with others. How often during your day did you meet someone else's bad mood with resistance, their criticism with defensiveness, their anxiety with impatience? When we're not at peace with our own difficult emotions, we automatically resist them in others. But when you learn to meet your own storms with compassion, you naturally become someone who can sit peacefully with others' storms as well. Master Thich Nhat Hanh taught about hugging meditation, literally embracing others, but more deeply embracing all of life's experiences with the same tenderness. When someone is angry, instead of meeting their anger with your own anger, you can silently embrace their suffering. When someone is critical, instead of defending yourself, you can hold space for the pain that drives their criticism. This doesn't mean being passive or allowing abuse. It means responding from love rather than reacting from fear. There's a profound Zen story about a master who was falsely accused of fathering a child. When the angry parents brought the baby to him, demanding that he take responsibility, he simply said, "Is that so?" and accepted the child with complete calm. He cared for the baby tenderly for several months until the real father confessed. When the parents returned to reclaim their child, apologizing profusely for their mistake, the master again simply said, "Is that so?" and handed back the baby without a trace of resentment. This story demonstrates compassionate non-resistance at its deepest level. The master didn't resist being falsely accused. He didn't resist caring for a child that wasn't his. He didn't resist letting the child go when the truth emerged. He met each situation with the same equanimity, the same willingness to respond with love, regardless of how he was being treated. His peace didn't depend on others' recognition of his innocence or appreciation of his kindness. You might think this level of non-resistance is impossible or even undesirable. Shouldn't we defend ourselves when wrongly accused? Shouldn't we feel angry when mistreated? But the master's response wasn't about suppressing natural human reactions. It was about not adding resistance to whatever was already happening. He felt what he felt, but he didn't create additional suffering by fighting against the circumstances. This wisdom applies even to the smallest interactions in your daily life. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a store clerk is rude, when a family member criticizes your choices, in each moment, you have an opportunity to practice compassionate non-resistance. Not by becoming a doormat or failing to respond appropriately, but by meeting the situation from your centered, peaceful nature, rather than from reactive resistance. As you settle deeper into rest tonight, you might notice how much energy you've been spending in subtle resistance to the people in your life. The family member who doesn't understand you, the coworker who annoys you, the friend who disappointed you, the stranger who was thoughtless. Each judgment, each mental criticism, each replay of how they should have acted differently is a form of resistance that lives in your body as tension, in your mind as agitation, in your heart as separation from the peace that's your birthright. Compassionate non-resistance invites you to release these mental burdens, not because others don't need to change or grow, but because your resistance to them changes nothing except your own inner state. The person who cut you off in traffic is already home, oblivious to your continued irritation. The rude clerk has moved on to other customers while you replay the interaction. Your resistance hurts only you, and your release of that resistance heals only you. But that healing is profound. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught a beautiful practice for transforming anger through compassion. When someone acts in a way that triggers your resistance, instead of focusing on their behavior, you look deeper to see their suffering. The angry person is suffering. The critical person is suffering. The thoughtless person is suffering. When you recognize this suffering, your heart naturally softens. You stop taking their actions personally and start seeing them as expressions of their own unhealed pain. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior or mean you should tolerate abuse. Boundaries are an expression of compassion, both self-compassion and compassion for others who need clear limits. But even boundaries can be set from love rather than resistance. You can say no without anger, leave without hatred, protect yourself without making others into enemies. This is the middle way of compassionate action, neither aggressive nor passive, but responsive from wisdom and love. There's a story of a Zen monk walking through a forest when he encountered a fierce tiger. Instead of running or fighting, he slowly backed up until he reached the edge of a cliff. With the tiger approaching and nowhere to go, he grabbed a vine and lowered himself over the edge. As he hung there, he noticed two mice, one white, one black, beginning to gnaw through the vine. In this moment of complete vulnerability, suspended between the tiger above and the unknown below, he noticed a wild strawberry growing from the cliff face. He picked it and ate it, marveling at its extraordinary sweetness. This story captures the essence of finding peace in the midst of difficulty without resistance. The monk didn't pretend the danger wasn't real or try to spiritualize away the genuine threat. But he also didn't add mental suffering to the already challenging situation. In the midst of uncertainty and fear, he remained present enough to taste the sweetness that was available even there. This is compassionate non-resistance, meeting reality as it is without adding the extra layer of mental fighting that turns pain into suffering. You can practice this same presence with the tigers in your own life. The difficult diagnoses, the relationship challenges, the financial pressures, the work stresses. None of these situations require your resistance to make them real. They're already real. But your resistance adds an extra dimension of suffering that serves no practical purpose. When you stop fighting what's already happening, you often discover unexpected sweetness hidden within the challenge, moments of connection, opportunities for growth, appreciation for what you still have. This compassionate approach to difficulty extends to your relationship with your own body and mind as you prepare for sleep. If physical discomfort arises, instead of tensing around it or demanding that it disappear, you can breathe into it with kindness. If worrying thoughts appear, instead of fighting them or judging yourself for having them, you can acknowledge them the way you might acknowledge clouds passing through the sky. Oh, worrying thoughts are here. That's what minds do sometimes. The Buddha spoke of the two arrows of suffering. The first arrow is the actual experience. Physical pain, emotional difficulty, challenging circumstances. This first arrow is often unavoidable. It's part of being human. But the second arrow is our resistance to the first arrow. Our anger about being in pain, our fear about feeling afraid, our frustration about being frustrated. This second arrow is optional, and it's usually the source of our deepest suffering. Compassionate non-resistance teaches us to feel the first arrow fully without shooting the second one. When sadness arises, we feel sad without being sad about being sad. When fear comes, we acknowledge the fear without adding fear about the fear. When pain is present, we experience the pain without creating additional pain through resistance. This isn't numbness or denial. It's tender-hearted courage that can meet any experience with love. Master Dogen taught that practice and enlightenment are one. This means that the very act of meeting your experience with compassion right here in this moment is already the awakened response. You don't need to perfect this practice or wait until you've mastered non-resistance to experience its benefits. Every moment of choosing compassion over criticism, softness over hardness, acceptance over resistance is itself a moment of awakening. Feel this awakening available to you right now as you rest. The awakening isn't a dramatic transformation. It's the simple shift from fighting this moment to embracing it. From judging your experience to loving yourself in the midst of whatever you're experiencing. From demanding that tonight be different to finding peace within tonight, exactly as it is. This compassionate awareness also transforms how you relate to sleep itself. Instead of lying in bed frustrated if sleep doesn't come immediately, you can practice loving kindness toward your wakeful mind. Instead of judging yourself for being tired, you can appreciate your body's honest signals about what it needs. Instead of resisting the natural process of falling asleep, you can surrender to it with trust and gratitude. There's a beautiful teaching from the Tibetan tradition about exchanging self and other, taking on others' suffering and giving away your own happiness. While this might sound masochistic, it points to something profound about the nature of compassion. When your heart is truly open, you realize there is no solid boundary between self and other. The suffering you see in the world is also your suffering. The healing you offer others is also your own healing. This interconnectedness means that every act of compassion toward yourself, toward others, toward life itself, heals something in the world. When you stop resisting your own difficult emotions, you become someone who can hold space for others' difficult emotions. When you meet your own fears with tenderness, you naturally become a source of courage for others who are afraid. When you find peace in the midst of your own challenges, you radiate that peace into a world that desperately needs it. Master Bankei taught about the unborn Buddha mind, the awareness that recognizes all experiences as temporary visitors in an unchanging space of love. This loving awareness doesn't try to fix what arises in it or push anything away. It simply loves unconditionally, the way the sun shines on both flowers and weeds, the way the earth supports both saints and sinners, the way your own heart continues to beat whether you're happy or sad, peaceful or anxious. As you settle more deeply into this recognition, notice how your whole body can relax when held in unconditional love. The tension in your shoulders softens when you stop demanding that you be different than you are. Your breathing deepens when you accept your current state rather than trying to force a different one. Your mind begins to quiet when you stop criticizing your thoughts and instead meet them with patient kindness. This is the natural result of compassionate non-resistance, not forced relaxation, but the organic peace that emerges when the war with yourself ends. You don't have to become someone else to deserve this peace. You don't have to solve all your problems or perfect your spiritual practice. You simply have to stop fighting the one who is already here. This imperfect, beautiful, struggling, seeking human being who deserves love, not because of achievements or worthiness, but simply because love is your nature. The great Zen poet Ryokan wrote, "What shall be my legacy? The blowing wind, the rippling water." This points to the ultimate compassion, leaving no trace of resistance in your wake, meeting each moment so completely that you flow with it like wind, like water, offering no friction to life's natural movement. When you die, whether tonight in sleep or years from now in final rest, what will you leave behind? Not your struggles and resistances, but the love you shared, the peace you embodied, the compassion you offered to a world in need of healing. Let this be your practice now as sleep approaches. To love so completely that resistance becomes impossible. To be so tender with yourself and your experience that fighting feels foreign. To trust so deeply in the natural process of rest and restoration that surrender becomes as natural as breathing. In this surrender, in this complete non-resistance to what is, you discover that peace was never something to achieve. It was always something to remember, something to return to, something you are when all the fighting finally ends. Rest now in this remembrance. Let your body be held by the same compassion that holds the whole universe. Let your mind be embraced by the same love that embraces all beings everywhere. You are not alone in your struggles, and you are not separate from the peace that surpasses understanding. You are that peace, temporarily forgetting itself in the dream of resistance, now awakening to its own eternal, loving nature. In the tender space of compassionate non-resistance, as your heart learns to meet all experience with love, you arrive at the most practical and profound question. How do you carry this understanding into the ordinary moments of life? How do you live from this place of flowing acceptance when morning comes and the world demands responses, decisions, actions? How do you integrate these deep teachings into the simple, sometimes chaotic reality of being human? The answer lies not in perfection, but in practice. Not in never resisting again, but in catching resistance more quickly when it arises. Not in maintaining constant peace, but in remembering how to return to peace when you've temporarily forgotten. Living without resistance isn't a destination you reach once and stay at forever. It's a way of being that you choose moment by moment, breath by breath, like coming home to yourself again and again. Right now, as you rest in this quiet space between waking and sleeping, you have the perfect opportunity to feel what integration actually means. Notice that you don't have to maintain any special state or hold on to any particular insight. You don't have to remember everything you've heard or apply all the teachings at once. You simply rest in the natural ease that emerges when you stop fighting what is. This ease, this simple peace of non-resistance, is always available to you, not as something to achieve, but as something to notice. The Zen master Yunmen taught his students about everyday mind. When asked about the deepest spiritual truth, he would point to ordinary activities, drinking tea, walking in the garden, washing bowls. The sacred isn't separate from the mundane. It's found by bringing complete presence to whatever you're doing, meeting each moment without the overlay of resistance or seeking. Living without resistance means bringing this quality of presence to everything, not just to meditation or quiet reflection, but to traffic jams and difficult conversations, to work deadlines and family dynamics, to the 1,000 small moments that make up each day. But how do you remember to be present when life moves so quickly? How do you catch resistance before it becomes a full-scale internal war? How do you respond wisely instead of reacting automatically? These questions point to what the Buddhist tradition calls mindfulness, but not mindfulness as another task to add to your busy life. Mindfulness as a returning, a gentle awakening to what's actually happening right here, right now. The breath becomes your most faithful teacher in this practice. Throughout your day, your breath continues its natural rhythm, whether you pay attention to it or not. But when you do return to the breath, in moments of stress, decision, or confusion, you instantly reconnect with the present moment. You step out of the mental story about what's happening and into the direct experience of what is. And in that direct experience, resistance has no foothold because there's no story for it to grip onto. There's a story of a student who asked Master Joshu how to practice Zen while living a busy householder's life. Joshu replied, "When you're chopping wood, chop wood. When you're carrying water, carry water." The student protested, "But Master, doesn't everyone do that?" Joshu smiled and said, "No, when most people are chopping wood, they're thinking about carrying water. When they're carrying water, they're thinking about chopping wood." This simple teaching contains the entire path of integration. Living without resistance means being completely where you are, doing what you're doing, without mental commentary about where you should be or what you should be doing instead. It means washing dishes with full attention to the warm water and soap bubbles, instead of mentally rehearsing tomorrow's presentation. It means listening to your friends speak without planning what you'll say next. It means feeling sadness when it arises without immediately strategizing how to feel better. As your body continues to relax into sleep, notice how this quality of presence naturally emerges when you stop trying to be somewhere else. Your head doesn't resist the pillow, your muscles don't fight the bed, your breath doesn't argue with the night air. There's a natural settling that happens when you cease the subtle struggle against what is. This same settling is available throughout your waking life. When you find yourself caught in mental loops of worry or replay, you can return to the simple reality of what's actually happening right now. Are your feet touching the ground? Is air moving in and out of your lungs? Are your eyes seeing what's in front of you? This basic anchoring in present moment reality is not a technique to practice. It's a coming home to what's always been true. The integration of non-resistance also transforms how you meet difficulty when it arises. Instead of immediately jumping to, "How do I fix this?" or "Why is this happening to me?" you learn to pause in the space before reaction. In that pause, you can ask different questions. What is this moment asking of me? How can I meet this with presence? What would love do here? There was a Zen monk who worked as a temple gardener. One morning he discovered that a storm had destroyed his carefully tended vegetable garden. Plants uprooted, months of work scattered by wind and rain. A younger monk found him standing quietly among the ruins and asked, "Aren't you upset? All your hard work is gone." The gardener smiled gently and said, "The storm taught the garden a new way to grow. I'm curious to see what emerges." This is the heart of living without resistance, meeting change, loss, and unexpected challenges with curiosity rather than outrage. The gardener didn't pretend the destruction wasn't real or immediately put on a happy face. He acknowledged what had happened and then asked the deeper question, "What now?" This is wisdom in action, not the wisdom that knows all the answers, but the wisdom that remains open to what life is teaching. You can practice this same openness with the smaller disruptions that arise each day. The meeting that runs long, the phone call that interrupts your planned evening, the headache that appears without warning. Instead of resistance being your first response, you can experiment with curiosity. What is this moment offering? What can you learn about yourself by observing your initial reaction? How can you move with this change instead of against it? This doesn't mean becoming passive or failing to take appropriate action when action is needed. The gardener in the story didn't just leave his garden in ruins. He began the work of replanting. But he did so from acceptance rather than resistance, from wisdom rather than reactivity. He worked with what was rather than lamenting what had been. Integration also means recognizing that you will forget these teachings many times. You'll find yourself caught in old patterns of resistance, lost in mental stories, reacting instead of responding. This too is part of the path, not a deviation from it. The Buddha himself called this beginner's mind, approaching each moment of awakening as if for the first time, without the burden of having to maintain some perfect state of enlightenment. Master Dogen taught that practice and enlightenment are one. This means that the very moment you notice you've been lost in resistance and choose to return to presence, that noticing itself is awakening. You don't have to wait until you've mastered non-resistance to experience its benefits. Each tiny return to awareness, each small choice to soften instead of harden, each breath taken in acceptance rather than struggle. These are not steps toward peace. They are peace itself expressing through you. Feel this truth now as your body prepares for sleep. You don't have to perfect anything to rest. You don't have to resolve all your problems to be worthy of peaceful sleep. You don't have to understand everything to let consciousness naturally settle into the deeper rhythms of rest. Your worthiness to rest is not earned through good behavior or spiritual achievement. It's inherent in your very being. The practice of integration becomes especially important in your relationships with others. When someone acts in a way that triggers your old patterns of resistance, when they're late, when they don't understand, when they seem to be making choices you wouldn't make, you have the opportunity to pause before reacting. In that pause, you can remember that their actions are arising from their own complex web of conditioning, fears, hopes, and beliefs. You can choose to respond to the person rather than just reacting to their behavior. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or failing to set appropriate boundaries. Sometimes love requires saying no. Sometimes wisdom means walking away. Sometimes compassion looks like confronting harmful behavior. But you can do all of these things from a place of non-resistance, not because you're trying to change the other person, but because you're responding from your own clarity and care. There's a story of a Zen master who was insulted by an angry visitor. The visitor shouted accusations and harsh words, trying to provoke the master into an argument. When the tirade was finished, the master asked calmly, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The visitor, confused by the question, replied, "It would still belong to the person who offered it." The master smiled and said, "You have offered me anger and insults, but I choose not to accept them. Please keep them for yourself." This story illustrates the freedom that comes from non-resistance. You don't have to take on other people's emotional states as your own. You don't have to absorb their anger, their disappointment, their criticism. You can remain open and loving while also maintaining your own center of peace. This isn't cold detachment. It's warm, wise presence that sees clearly without becoming entangled. As you settle more deeply into rest, you might notice how your own emotions become like the master in this story. Instead of being overwhelmed by whatever arises, anxiety, sadness, frustration, excitement, you can observe these feelings with the same calm presence. You don't reject them or try to make them go away, but you also don't identify completely with them. They become weather patterns moving through the sky of your awareness, temporary and impermanent, worthy of acknowledgement, but not of total surrender to their drama. The integration of non-resistance also changes how you approach your goals and ambitions. You can still work toward things you care about, still make plans and take action, but you do so with a lighter grip on outcomes. The Buddha described this as right effort, energy applied with wisdom rather than desperate attachment to results. Imagine planting a garden. You prepare the soil with care, plant the seeds with attention, water, and tend the growing plants with dedication. This is effort, but it's effortless effort, aligned with natural process rather than fighting against it. You can't force the seeds to grow faster by pulling on the sprouts. You can't make the sun shine or the rain fall on your schedule, but you can show up consistently, do what's yours to do, and trust the larger process of growth that's beyond your control. This is how you can approach all of life's endeavors when resistance dissolves. You engage fully with whatever is in front of you while holding outcomes lightly. You care deeply while staying unattached. You work with genuine commitment while remaining flexible about how things unfold. There was once a calligrapher who spent years perfecting his art. Students would come to learn from him, expecting to find someone obsessed with technique and precision. Instead, they discovered a master who approached each brushstroke with total attention, but no attachment to the final result. "If I worry about whether this character will be beautiful," he would say, "my hand becomes tight and my mind becomes small. But when I simply allow each stroke to emerge from emptiness, the beauty takes care of itself." This is the secret of effortless action, not trying to control the outcome, but putting your whole being into the process. When resistance drops away, you discover that your natural state is one of spontaneous, appropriate response to whatever life presents. You don't have to think your way through every decision or worry your way through every challenge. Wisdom arises naturally when the mental noise of resistance quiets. Feel this natural wisdom available to you now as sleep approaches. You don't have to figure out how to fall asleep. Your body knows. You don't have to solve all tomorrow's problems before you rest. They will be there in the morning, and you'll meet them with whatever clarity is available then. You don't have to understand everything that happened today or plan everything that might happen next week. You can simply be here, now, in this moment of natural settling into rest. Living without resistance means trusting this natural process not just in sleep, but in all of life. Trusting that you don't have to micromanage every aspect of your existence. Trusting that the same intelligence that grows your hair and heals your wounds is also guiding the larger patterns of your life in ways your thinking mind can't always see or understand. This doesn't make you passive or fatalistic. You still make choices, still take responsibility, still engage with life fully, but you do so from a place of partnership with life rather than opposition to it. You become like water, soft and yielding, yet able to carve canyons through solid rock over time. Your persistence comes not from struggle, but from alignment with what wants to emerge. Master Linji taught his students about the person of no rank, the authentic self that exists before all the roles and identities you carry. This person needs nothing from the external world to be complete. This person is not threatened by change or loss because it recognizes itself as the unchanging awareness in which all change happens. This person lives without resistance because it knows itself to be life itself, flowing naturally according to conditions. You have access to this person of no rank right now. Beneath all your thoughts about who you are, all your worries about who you should become, all your stories about what you need to be happy, beneath all of this mental construction lies something utterly simple and peaceful, something that has never been disturbed by any external circumstance, something that is completely at ease just being what it is. As you rest in this recognition, you might notice that the integration you've been seeking isn't something you have to work toward. It's already happening. Each time you choose presence over mental storytelling, each time you soften instead of hardening around difficulty, each time you respond from love rather than react from fear, in these moments, you're already living without resistance. You're already free. This freedom isn't dramatic or flashy. It's quiet, subtle, available in the most ordinary moments. It's in the way you can wash your face in the morning with complete attention to the sensation of warm water. It's in how you can listen to a friend without planning what you'll say next. It's in the ability to feel sad without making sadness wrong, to experience change without demanding permanence, to live fully without needing life to be other than it is. The great Zen teacher Bankei spoke of the unborn Buddha mind, the awareness that has never come into being and can never be destroyed. This awareness is your true nature, and it's always already present. It doesn't resist anything because it's not threatened by anything. It doesn't cling to experiences because it's not separate from them. It doesn't struggle with life because it is the very life that flows through all things. Tonight, as consciousness naturally dissolves into sleep, you're practicing this same letting go that Bankei pointed to. You're releasing identification with the thinking mind, with the body's sensations, with the day's concerns and tomorrow's plans. You're returning to the source awareness that's always been your deepest nature. And in that return, you discover what you've always known, but sometimes forget. You are already whole, already free, already at peace. Not because you've achieved anything or conquered resistance, but because peace is what you are when all the struggling finally stops. Rest now in this remembrance. Let the night hold you with the same gentleness you've learned to offer your own experience. Let sleep come as naturally as breath, as effortlessly as the beating of your heart. You don't have to resist anything, not even resistance itself. You can simply allow this moment to be exactly as it is, and in that allowing, discover the freedom that has been waiting for you all along. Not in some distant future, but here, now, in this very breath, this very heartbeat, this very moment of coming home to yourself. The path of living without resistance is not a destination you arrive at once and inhabit forever. It's a way of walking that you choose with each step, a way of breathing that you remember with each breath, a way of being that you return to again and again. And each return is complete, in itself. Each moment of non-resistance is perfect as it is. Each choice to soften rather than harden is already the enlightenment you seek. There is nowhere else to go, nothing else to become, nothing else to achieve. There is only this breath, this heartbeat, this moment of profound, healing rest in what has always been true. You are life itself, flowing perfectly, without resistance, without struggle, without end. As you rest more deeply in the natural ease of non-resistance, something subtle begins to reveal itself. In the spaces between thoughts, in the quiet moments when you're not trying to fill the silence with activity or analysis, there's something present that has no name, no form, no agenda. The Zen masters called this emptiness, not the emptiness of a vacant room, but the pregnant emptiness of infinite possibility. This emptiness is not nothing. It's the fullness that appears when you stop cramming every moment with mental content. It's what remains when you cease the constant commentary that usually fills your inner space. Right now, as you settle into rest, you can sense this spaciousness opening around your thoughts, like clouds parting to reveal the sky that was always there. Your awareness begins to recognize its own vast, empty nature. There was once a student who came to the great master Huang Po, seeking the deepest teaching of Buddhism. "Master," he said, "please give me the ultimate truth." Huang Po remained silent for a long time. The student waited, growing increasingly uncomfortable with the silence. Finally, he spoke again. "Master, I asked for your teaching. Why don't you answer?" Huang Po smiled gently and replied, "I have been teaching you this whole time, but you were too busy waiting for words to hear the silence speaking." This story points to something your thinking mind struggles to grasp. The deepest wisdom doesn't come packaged in concepts or explanations. It lives in the gaps between thoughts, in the space between breaths, in the stillness that exists right now as you rest. You don't have to understand emptiness intellectually. You can simply rest in it. Feel the space available to you now, between the words you're hearing and your response to them, between one breath and the next, between the last thought that passed through your mind and whatever thought might come next. In these gaps, live something more real than any mental content that could fill them. This is your natural state, not empty in the sense of lacking something, but empty of the resistance that usually crowds your inner landscape. The Buddha taught that all suffering comes from trying to fill this emptiness with temporary things. We stuff it with thoughts, emotions, plans, worries, memories, hopes. We pack every moment so full of mental activity that we lose touch with the peace that's already present underneath. But emptiness isn't asking to be filled, it's asking to be recognized for what it is. The space in which all experience can arise and pass away without disturbance. Master Joshu was famous for his teaching about mu, which means no or nothing. When asked if a dog has Buddha nature, he simply said mu. Students spent years meditating on this word, trying to understand what he meant. But the teaching wasn't in the meaning of the word. It was in the empty space the word pointed to. The place where all questions dissolve because there's no one left to ask them. You don't need to solve the riddle of mu. You can simply rest in the not knowing it represents. This not knowing is not ignorance. It's the wisdom that understands some truths can only be lived, not thought. The wisdom that recognizes peace as your natural state, rather than something to be achieved. As your body continues to settle, notice how emptiness naturally appears when you stop trying to manage your experience. Your thoughts begin to space out more. The mental chatter slows down. There are longer pauses between internal comments. This isn't a sign that something's wrong or that you're getting drowsy. This is your awareness returning to its natural rhythm. In Zen, they speak of one mind, the undivided awareness that exists before it splits itself into observer and observed, thinker and thought, resistor and what's being resisted. This one mind is empty of all the divisions that usually fragment your experience. It doesn't take sides. It doesn't have preferences. It simply allows everything to be exactly as it is. There's a story of two monks arguing about a flag waving in the wind. One said, "The flag is moving." The other replied, "No, the wind is moving." Their teacher overheard the argument and said quietly, "Neither the flag nor the wind is moving. Your mind is moving." This teaching points to the stillness that underlies all apparent motion, the emptiness that remains unchanged while everything else flows and changes. Your mind right now might be like those arguing monks, caught up in mental movement, in the back and forth of thoughts and reactions. But you can step out of this mental movement anytime you choose, not by stopping thoughts, but by recognizing the stillness in which thoughts appear, not by controlling the wind, but by finding the place in yourself that's never disturbed by any mental weather. This empty awareness is what you truly are, not the thoughts that come and go, not the emotions that rise and fall, not the sensations that appear and disappear. You are the space in which all of these experiences happen, and this space is never touched by what passes through it. The sky isn't made wet by rain clouds. Your awareness isn't made anxious by anxious thoughts. Master Linji taught his students to find the person of no rank, the self that exists before all identities, all roles, all descriptions. This person has no resume, no history, no story to maintain. This person is empty of all the content that usually defines someone. Yet this person is more real than any identity could ever be. This is who you are when you stop trying to be someone in particular. Feel this quality of empty presence available right now. You don't have to be anyone special to access it. You don't have to maintain any particular state or achieve any specific insight. You simply rest in what's here when you stop adding mental commentary to your experience. This is perhaps the most profound teaching of all, that what you're seeking is not something extra to add to yourself, but something to recognize as already present. Emptiness also reveals why resistance is so futile. What is there to resist when you realize you're not separate from what you thought you were fighting against? Your anger, your sadness, your confusion, they're all arising in the same empty space as your peace and joy. They're all made of the same basic awareness. When you recognize this, the whole drama of resistance collapses. There's nothing to push away because there's no solid boundary between self and other. inside and outside. There was a master who was known for his unusual teaching methods. Students would come asking deep philosophical questions, and he would respond by pointing at flowers, or laughing, or sometimes just sitting in silence. One persistent student demanded, "Master, I've been asking you about the meaning of existence for months, and you never give me a straight answer." The master picked up his teacup, poured the tea onto the ground, and held up the empty cup. "Now," he said, "what is the meaning of this cup?" The student started to answer, but the master continued. "When it was full, you called it a teacup. Now that it's empty, what do you call it?" The usefulness wasn't in the tea or in the ceramic. It was in the empty space that could hold anything. This story illustrates the practical wisdom of emptiness. Your value doesn't come from what you contain, your thoughts, achievements, knowledge, experiences. Your value is in your capacity to hold all of life's experiences without being defined by any of them. Like the empty cup, you're most useful when you're not already full of preconceptions about how things should be. As you rest deeper into this understanding, you might notice a profound relaxation that has nothing to do with your body getting more comfortable. It's the relaxation that comes when you stop carrying the burden of being someone in particular, the relief of not having to maintain a consistent self-image, the peace of not having to defend or promote any identity. This doesn't make you disappear or become a blank slate. Personality still functions, preferences still arise, choices still get made, but they arise from emptiness rather than from a solid sense of self that needs protection and validation. They flow more naturally, more appropriately, with less attachment to outcome and less fear of making mistakes. The great Master Dogen wrote about just sitting, zazen that has no goal, no technique, no achievement to reach. Just the pure activity of sitting, empty of agenda. This pointing toward goalless practice reveals something essential about emptiness. It's not something you cultivate or develop. It's what you are when you stop cultivating and developing. It's what remains when all effort ceases. You can practice this same goalless awareness right now as you rest. Not trying to fall asleep, not trying to stay awake, not trying to have insights, not trying to stop thoughts. Just resting in the empty awareness that needs nothing from this moment except what's already here. This is perhaps the most profound form of non-resistance, not resisting even your own spiritual seeking. In this empty space, you begin to understand what the Zen masters meant when they spoke of ordinary mind. Not a special state of consciousness, but the simple awareness that's present right now without any modification or improvement. The mind that sees without agenda, hears without judgment, feels without resistance. This ordinary mind is extraordinary only because it's so rare for people to recognize it as their natural state. There's a famous exchange between two Zen masters. The first asked, "What is Buddha?" The second replied, 3 pounds of flax." The first master was pointing to the tendency to make enlightenment into something special, something other than ordinary experience. The second master was pointing to the sacred nature of everything, even something as mundane as 3 pounds of flax. Buddha nature isn't hidden in some special experience. It's present in the most ordinary moments, when awareness rests empty of expectations about what spiritual experience should look like. This ordinariness of emptiness is deeply restful. You don't have to work to maintain it or worry about losing it. It's not a state that comes and goes based on your spiritual performance. It's the constant background of all experience, as present when you're confused as when you're clear, as available when you're agitated as when you're calm. Feel this constancy now, beneath whatever thoughts are present, beneath whatever physical sensations are arising, beneath whatever emotions might be flowing. There's something unchanged, unmoving, untroubled. This is your refuge, not because you retreat to it, but because you recognize you've never actually left it. All your struggles have been happening within this peaceful emptiness, like waves on the surface of a deep, still lake. Master Bankei taught about the unborn Buddha mind, the awareness that was never born and can never die. This unborn awareness is what you are beneath all your personal history, beneath all your psychological patterns, beneath all your spiritual seeking. It's empty of all content, yet somehow more intimate than anything you could think or feel. It's what's looking through your eyes right now, what's hearing these words, what's aware of being aware. As your body continues to release into rest, let this recognition settle deeper than thought. You don't have to understand emptiness or figure out how to live from it. You can simply let yourself be held by the vast, gentle space that you are. Let your worries, your plans, your sense of identity soften into this emptiness, like sugar dissolving in water. This is the ultimate teaching about non-resistance, that there's nothing to resist because there's no solid self to do the resisting. There's just this open, aware emptiness in which resistance and non-resistance appear as passing experiences. And in recognizing yourself as this emptiness, you find a peace that was never disturbed by any of the storms you thought were threatening you. The ancient Heart Sutra says, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." This means that everything you experience, thoughts, emotions, sensations, the world around you, is not separate from this empty awareness. The emptiness isn't somewhere else, waiting for you to find it. It's the very nature of what you're experiencing right now. When you see this clearly, the whole project of spiritual seeking completes itself. There's nothing to attain because you're already what you were looking for. Rest now in this completion. Let the night sky teach you about the kind of emptiness that contains all the stars. Let the silence between sounds teach you about the awareness that hears all noise. Let your own breath teach you about the space that allows both inhalation and exhalation without being limited by either. You are this space. You are this silence. You are this emptiness that's somehow full of infinite possibility. Not as a belief or concept, but as the lived reality that becomes obvious when you stop looking for yourself in the wrong places. Stop looking for yourself in thoughts and find yourself in the awareness of thoughts. Stop looking for yourself in experiences and find yourself in the experiencing itself. In this recognition, resistance becomes impossible because there's nothing separate from the flow to resist it. There's just flowing, happening by itself, in perfect harmony with the emptiness from which it arises and to which it returns. And you don't observe this flow from outside. You are the flowing, you are the emptiness, You are the perfect, effortless dance of existence knowing itself. This is the deepest teaching sleep offers every night. The invitation to dissolve back into the source awareness from which all experiences emerge. Tonight, as consciousness naturally fades into rest, you're not losing anything real. You're returning to the emptiness that you are, the peace that was never disturbed, the wholeness that was never broken. And in that return, you remember what the masters have always known, that seeking ends not when you find something, but when you realize you were never lost. In the deepest recognition of emptiness, in the profound understanding that you are the space in which all experience arises, something even more intimate reveals itself. Beneath the emptiness, within the silence, at the heart of all seeking and finding, there is pure stillness. Not the stillness of something stopped, but the stillness that was never moving. Not the silence of sounds ended, but the silence from which all sound emerges and to which it returns. This is your ultimate home, not a place you go to, but what you are when all traveling stops, not a state you achieve, but what remains when all achieving ceases. You are returning to this stillness now, as your body settles and your mind grows quiet. This isn't preparation for sleep. This is remembering what you never actually left. The ancient masters spoke of this as the gateless gate, the paradox of arriving somewhere you've always been. There's nothing to enter because you're already inside. There's nothing to find because you are what was never lost. Tonight, as consciousness naturally dims and releases, you're not going anywhere. You're simply recognizing where you've always been. There was once a student who traveled for years seeking the perfect teacher. He visited monastery after monastery, learning meditation techniques, studying scriptures, practicing countless methods. Finally, exhausted and discouraged, he sat down by a quiet stream to rest. As he listened to the water flowing over stones, something clicked. He realized he had been carrying his destination with him all along. The peace he sought wasn't in any external place or practice. It was in the very awareness that had been seeking it. You too have been carrying your destination with you through this entire journey. Every teaching you've heard, every story that resonated, every moment of understanding, they weren't adding something new to you. They were helping you recognize what was already complete. The stillness you're touching now isn't different from the stillness that was present when you first began listening. It's the same unchanging awareness, simply more clearly seen. Night is humanity's greatest teacher of stillness. Every evening, the world naturally settles into quiet. The busy activity of day gives way to rest. The constant doing dissolves into being. Your body knows this rhythm intimately. Your cells understand the wisdom of cycles. Your nervous system is already preparing for the deep restoration that comes when you stop resisting the natural pull toward rest. Feel how willingly your body wants to let go. Your muscles don't fight the bed support. Your bones don't resist gravity's gentle pull. Your breath doesn't argue with the night air. There's an intelligence at work here that's far older and wiser than your thinking mind. The same intelligence that moves the tides and turns the seasons is moving through you right now, inviting you deeper into the stillness that sustains all life. Master Dogen wrote about Buddha nature as the inherent awakeness that's present in all beings. He said this, nature doesn't come and go based on our spiritual practice or understanding. It's constant, like the wetness of water or the heat of fire. Your true nature is stillness itself, not something you have, but what you are. And like water that's always wet, whether it's moving or still, you are always this awareness, whether your mind is active or quiet. There's a story of an old woman who lived alone in a small mountain hut. Travelers would sometimes stop by, seeking shelter for the night. She never spoke much, just offered tea and a place by the fire. But people left feeling deeply rested, as if they had touched something essential. When asked about her secret, she simply said, "I gave up trying to be helpful. Now I just am what I am. Sometimes that's enough." This old woman understood something profound about stillness. It's not something you do or create or maintain. It's what you are when you stop trying to be anything else. When you cease the exhausting project of self-improvement and simply rest in your natural state. This isn't laziness or giving up. This is the deepest intelligence, recognizing that what you've been seeking is what you already are. Your breath is teaching you this lesson right now. Each inhalation arises from stillness. Each exhalation returns to stillness. The pause between breaths is not emptiness waiting to be filled. It's completeness that needs nothing added. In this pause, in this moment of natural stillness between movements, your true nature is most obvious, not hidden or distant, but intimately present. The great Zen master Huangpo taught that seeking Buddha nature is like looking for an ox while riding on one. You exhaust yourself searching for what's carrying you. You strain your eyes, looking for what's behind them seeing. Right now, as you hear these words, what is it that's listening? As you feel your body against the bed, what is it that's aware of feeling? This aware presence isn't something you possess. It's what you are. This presence has been with you through every experience of your life. It was there in childhood wonder and adult worry. It witnessed your happiest moments and your deepest sorrows. It observed your successes and failures with the same unchanging clarity. This witnessing awareness is the stillness that's never been disturbed by any of life's storms. It's what remains constant while everything else flows and changes. Night sky teaches this same lesson. The darkness isn't the absence of light. It's the space that holds all light. Stars shine not because they fight against darkness, but because they rest in it. They find their brightness not by resisting the night, but by being themselves within it. You too can let your awareness shine naturally within the darkness of not knowing, of uncertainty, of the vast mystery of existence. There was a master who never gave formal teachings. Students would gather hoping for profound Dharma talks, but he would just go about his daily activities, sweeping, gardening, preparing simple meals. Years passed. Finally, a frustrated student demanded, "Master, when will you teach us?" The master paused in his sweeping and said quietly, "What do you think I've been doing? Every movement from stillness is teaching. Every return to stillness is learning. You've been trying to hear words when the whole body-mind is already speaking." This master understood that stillness isn't separate from activity. True stillness isn't the opposite of movement. It's the aware presence that remains unchanged, whether the body is moving or still, whether the mind is busy or quiet, whether life is turbulent or peaceful. This is the stillness you're resting in now, not the stillness of a corpse, but the alive, aware stillness of consciousness itself. As you settle deeper into rest, you might notice thoughts becoming more spaced out. The mental commentary that usually narrates your experience grows quieter. The urgent sense of needing to figure things out fades. This isn't unconsciousness approaching. This is consciousness relaxing into its natural state. Like a river widening as it nears the ocean, your awareness is expanding as it remembers its source. In Zen, there's a teaching about shikantaza, just sitting. Not sitting in order to achieve something, but sitting as the expression of what you already are. Your lying here now can be the same pure activity, not lying down in order to fall asleep, but resting as the natural expression of your true nature. Sleep will come or it won't, but the resting in aware stillness is already complete. This completeness is what the Buddha meant by nirvana. Not a place you go after death, but the peace that's available right here when resistance ends. When you stop trying to be different from what you are. When you cease the constant effort to improve or fix or control your experience. Nirvana is discovered to be your ordinary state when extraordinary effort finally stops. There's a beautiful story about a dying Zen master. His disciples gathered around, expecting final profound teachings. Instead, he simply said, "I've been dying my whole life, one breath at a time. This is just the last breath. No different from any other, except now there's no next breath to wait for." Then he smiled peacefully and was gone. His teaching was complete stillness, meeting even death without resistance, without making it special or terrible, just the natural completion of what had always been happening. You practice this same dying every night as you fall asleep. Each day's identity dies away. Each day's concerns release their grip. Each day's sense of urgency fades into irrelevance. Sleep teaches you that you can let go of everything you think you are and still be perfectly fine. In fact, you're more than fine. You're at peace. The peace that was never actually threatened by any of the day's dramas. This peace isn't personal. It doesn't belong to you like a possession you could lose. You belong to it. You are its temporary expression. Like a wave that rises from the ocean and returns to the ocean, your individual consciousness emerges from this universal stillness and returns to it each night. But the ocean is never diminished by the wave's return. If anything, it's enriched. Master Linji taught his students about the true person of no rank, the self that exists before all titles, all achievements, all identities. This person needs no introduction and leaves no trace. This person is what you are in deep sleep when all the day's roles have been forgotten. Teacher, parent, worker, seeker, all these labels dissolve, and what remains is pure conscious being, not the being of something in particular, but being itself. You are touching this pure being right now, not as a special experience to hold on to, but as the simple fact of existing before you. Dress existence up with stories about who you are and what you need. In this undressed awareness, there's nothing lacking and nothing extra. just the profound simplicity of being aware that you are. The ancient Upanishads speak of this as Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. Not three separate things, but three aspects of the same reality. You exist. You are aware of existing. And there's a natural contentment in this simple fact of aware existence. This contentment doesn't depend on circumstances being pleasant. It's the basic joy of being itself, prior to any judgments about whether being is good or bad. Feel this basic contentment available now, not happiness about something specific, but the simple satisfaction of awareness meeting itself. The quiet joy of consciousness recognizing its own nature. Like coming home after a long, difficult journey, there's relief in remembering what you never actually left. There's rest in recognizing what was never tired. There's peace in touching what was never disturbed. As your body continues its natural preparation for sleep, let this recognition deepen beyond thought. The teachings you've heard tonight aren't concepts to remember. They're pointing to what you are beyond memory, beyond understanding, beyond the need to know anything at all. They're invitations to rest in the stillness that requires no maintenance, no protection, no effort to sustain. There's a final story about a young monk who approached his teacher with one last question. "Master, I've studied all the teachings, practiced all the methods, understood all the principles. What more is there?" The old teacher looked at him with infinite kindness and whispered, "Who is asking?" In that moment, the question and the questioner dissolved together. What remained was just stillness being itself, with no one there to disturb it. This is your invitation now, not to answer any final questions, but to let both questions and questioner dissolve into the stillness that was never disturbed by either. Not to remember anything more, but to rest in what you are before memory begins. Not to achieve any final understanding, but to be what understanding points toward. The night is holding you now with the same tender care it has offered humanity for countless millennia. The darkness wrapping around you is not empty space, but the womb of all existence, the source from which all light emerges, and to which it gratefully returns. You are part of this ancient rhythm, this eternal dance of emergence and return, activity and rest, knowing and unknowing. Let yourself be held completely by this rhythm. Let your breathing synchronize with the quiet pulse of the earth beneath you. Let your heartbeat align with the deeper rhythm that moves the stars in their courses. You are not separate from this vast, intelligent unfolding. You are its momentary self-recognition, its way of knowing itself through your awareness. And in this knowing, all resistance naturally ends. Not through effort or practice, but through recognition. You see that there was never anything to resist, because there was never anyone separate from life to do the resisting. There was just life living itself, awareness knowing itself, stillness being itself through what seemed like separate waves, but was always the same ocean. Rest now in this ocean of stillness. Let consciousness settle into its source like sediment in still water, naturally falling to the bottom. There's nothing to hold on to and nothing to push away. No self to maintain and no experience to escape. Just this vast, gentle awareness in which all of life's dreams arise and pass away like ripples on an infinite lake. Sleep comes not as unconsciousness, but as the deepest consciousness. Awareness so complete it needs no object, so fulfilled it requires no content, so at peace it welcomes even the absence of experience. You are not losing anything as you drift towards sleep. You are returning to everything you ever were, are, and will be. The stillness receives you now as it has always received you, as it receives all beings when they stop trying to be anything other than what they are. In this receiving, you discover the deepest teaching of all. You were never lost, never broken, never separate from the peace you sought. You were always home in this stillness, always held by this love, always complete in this moment of perfect, effortless being. Rest well in this recognition. Let the night teach you what the day sometimes obscures, that you are not the wave frantically trying to reach the ocean. You are the ocean, temporarily dreaming itself as a wave, now remembering the truth that was never actually forgotten. In this remembering, all seeking ends not in finding, but in being found by what you always already are. Now, let us conclude our journey with some timeless Zen stories. A poor man walks slowly through a dense forest, his shoulders heavy with worry, bills unpaid, relationships strained, dreams deferred. Each step seemed to echo with the weight of his many troubles. The canopy above filtered the sunlight into gentle patterns on the forest floor, but he noticed none of this beauty. His mind churned endlessly through his problems, each thought leading to another worry, another reason why his life felt so difficult. Exhausted from walking and thinking, he stopped to rest against what appeared to be an ordinary tree. Its trunk was wide and welcoming, its bark smooth against his back. As he leaned there, catching his breath, he realized how thirsty he had become. "I wish I had something to drink," he murmured to himself. Instantly, as if materializing from thin air, a cup of cool, clear water appeared in his hand. He stared at it in disbelief, turning the cup this way and that, examining it for some trick or illusion. The water looked pure, inviting. Tentatively, he brought it to his lips and drank. It was the most refreshing water he had ever tasted, cool and sweet, exactly what his parched throat needed. "That was strange," he said aloud, but his stomach chose that moment to growl with hunger. Almost without thinking, he wished for food. A simple but nourishing meal appeared before him on a wooden plate. Fresh bread, ripe fruit, and vegetables that looked as if they had just been harvested. The aroma made his mouth water. He ate slowly, marveling at each bite. "My wishes are being granted," he whispered in amazement. The realization sent a thrill through his entire body. "Well then," he said with growing excitement, "I wish for a beautiful home of my own." Before his eyes, in the meadow just beyond the tree, a magnificent house materialized. It was everything he had ever dreamed of. Spacious rooms filled with light, comfortable furnishings, gardens blooming with flowers. His heart raced with joy as he stood and approached his new home. "If I have such a house," he reasoned, "I'll need help to maintain it." He wished for servants, and immediately several kind-faced people appeared, bowing respectfully and asking how they might serve him. The man laughed with delight, hardly believing his incredible fortune. And what good is a beautiful home without someone special to share it with? He wondered aloud. He wished for a beautiful, loving, intelligent woman to be his companion. A radiant woman appeared beside him, her eyes warm with affection, her smile gentle and knowing. But as she took his hand, something shifted in the man's mind. The rational voice that had whispered doubts throughout his life suddenly grew louder. "Wait a minute," he said, stepping back from the woman.
This is ridiculous. I'm not this lucky. Things like this don't happen to people like me. This can't be real.
As the words left his mouth, everything began to fade. The woman's loving smile dissolved first, then the servants, then the beautiful house, and finally, even the simple meal he had enjoyed. He found himself alone again, leaning against what now seemed like an ordinary tree, with nothing but his original troubles for company. He shook his head knowingly. "I knew it," he muttered, and walked away through the forest, his mind immediately returning to the familiar patterns of worry and complaint that had occupied him before. Buddha's wisdom reminds us, we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. The heart of this lesson lies in understanding the creative power of belief and the self-sabotaging nature of doubt. Why do we so readily dismiss the good that comes into our lives? Zen Buddhism points to a deeply conditioned pattern in the human mind, the tendency to trust our limitations more than our possibilities. We become so familiar with struggle, so identified with our problems, that abundance feels foreign, even threatening to our sense of self. Consider how often throughout your day you might receive unexpected kindness, notice surprising beauty, or encounter opportunities that could transform your circumstances. How quickly do you dismiss these gifts as coincidence, luck, or too good to be true? This reflexive doubt often causes us to literally walk away from the very blessings we've been seeking. The wishing tree represents the responsive universe that Zen teaches us about, reality that mirrors back our deepest beliefs about what we deserve and what's possible. When we approach life with trust and openness, we often discover resources and opportunities that were always available but previously invisible to us. When we approach with cynicism and self-doubt, these same possibilities seem to vanish. The man in the story had access to everything he needed, but his conditioning told him that someone like him couldn't possibly be worthy of such gifts. His belief in his own limitations became more powerful than the evidence of his senses. This is the tragedy of self-doubt. It causes us to abandon the very solutions to our problems. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi said, "Each of you is perfect the way you are, and you can use a little improvement." This paradox points to the balance between accepting our inherent worthiness while remaining open to growth. The man under the tree couldn't hold both truths simultaneously, that he was worthy of good things and that positive change was possible in his life. In our modern context, we encounter wishing trees constantly. The colleague who offers genuine friendship, but we assume they have ulterior motives. The job opportunity that seems perfect, but we convince ourselves we're not qualified. The romantic relationship that feels too good to be true, so we sabotage it before it can disappoint us. Each time we choose familiar limitation over unfamiliar possibility, we walk away from our own wishing tree. The Buddha taught, doubt everything, find your own light. But there's a crucial distinction between the doubt that leads to wisdom and the doubt that leads to self-defeat. Wise doubt questions assumptions and seeks truth. Self-defeating doubt assumes the worst about ourselves and our possibilities, then treats these assumptions as facts. Zen practice invites us to notice when we're dismissing good fortune, abundance, or love simply because it doesn't match our habitual story about ourselves. Can we remain open to the possibility that we might be more deserving, more capable, more lovable than our conditioning suggests. Tonight, as you reflect on the day's experiences, can you identify moments when you might have walked away from your own wishing tree? Perhaps a compliment you dismissed, an opportunity you assumed wasn't meant for you, or a moment of joy you cut short because it felt too good to last. What would it mean to trust in your worthiness to receive life's gifts? As the Buddha observed, thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. The wishing tree's magic isn't diminished by granting wishes, it's fulfilled by them. And our capacity to receive life's blessings isn't diminished by accepting them, it's expanded. A clever young student had grown tired of his teacher's seemingly wise responses to every question. He was convinced that the old master simply spoke in riddles to appear profound, and he decided to devise a test that would expose what he believed was mere pretense. After thinking for several days, he conceived what he thought was the perfect trap. One morning, the young man caught a small sparrow in the garden. The tiny bird trembled in his cupped hands, its heart beating rapidly against his palms. He held it carefully behind his back as he approached his teacher, who was sitting peacefully in the morning sunlight, reading ancient texts. "Master," the student called out with barely concealed excitement, "I have a question that will test your legendary wisdom." The old teacher looked up from his reading with patient, gentle eyes. He had seen this look of mischievous confidence in many students over the years, and he understood the young man's need to challenge authority as part of his own growth and learning. "Please," the teacher said simply, "ask your question." The student stepped closer, keeping the bird hidden behind his back. "Master, I hold a small bird in my hands. Using your great wisdom, tell me, is this bird alive or dead?" The young man felt incredibly clever. He had created what he believed was an impossible situation for his teacher. If the master answered alive, he would quickly snap the bird's neck and reveal the dead creature, proving the teacher wrong. If the master answered dead, he would simply open his hands and let the living bird fly away, again proving the teacher's lack of true insight. Either way, the student was certain he would expose his teacher's supposed wisdom as nothing more than lucky guessing and philosophical double-talk. He waited eagerly for the response that would give him the satisfaction of finally outsmarting the old man. The teacher sat quietly for a long moment, not trying to peer behind the student's back or gather more information. His eyes seemed to look not at the student, but through him, as if perceiving something far deeper than the simple trick being attempted. Finally, with a gentle smile that held both compassion and understanding, the master spoke. "The answer, my young friend, is in your hands." The student stood frozen, his mouth hanging open slightly. In 3 simple words, his elaborate trap had been completely dismantled. The teacher hadn't fallen for either option of the false dilemma. Instead, he had pointed to something far more profound: the fundamental truth that the student himself held the power to determine the outcome. The young man looked down at his hands, still cupped behind his back, feeling the tiny bird's rapid heartbeat against his palms. He realized with startling clarity that the master was right. The bird's fate had never depended on the teacher's answer or supposed wisdom. It had always been entirely in the student's control. More than that, he began to understand that this was true about far more than just this moment. The power to choose life or death, creation or destruction, compassion or cruelty, all of it was always in his hands. In every situation, every day. Slowly, the young man brought his hands forward and opened them. The small bird sat still for just a moment, as if gathering itself, then spread its wings and flew into the blue sky, disappearing among the trees. Buddha's wisdom teaches us, we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. This ancient wisdom illuminates the profound responsibility that comes with conscious choice and the recognition that we are always the architects of our own experience. Why do we so often look outside ourselves for answers that can only be found within? Zen Buddhism points to our tendency to seek authority figures who will tell us what to do, what to think, what to choose. But the deepest teaching is that true wisdom cannot be given from one person to another. It can only be discovered through our own conscious engagement with life. The student's question seemed to be about the teacher's insight, but it was actually about his own power. He was so focused on proving the master wrong that he almost missed the profound truth being offered, that every moment presents us with choices that shape not only our immediate circumstances, but our character and destiny. Consider your own daily decisions, both large and small. How often do you wait for someone else to tell you what the right choice is? How frequently do you seek permission, approval, or guidance for decisions that ultimately rest entirely in your own hands? The young man's bird represents all the power we hold, but sometimes fail to recognize. In our relationships, careers, and spiritual development, we constantly face moments where we hold something precious in our hands, the well-being of others, our own integrity, opportunities for growth or destruction. The outcome depends not on external circumstances or other people's wisdom, but on what we choose to do with the power we possess. The Master's response reveals something crucial about authentic teaching. True teachers don't give answers. They point us back to our own capacity for wisdom. They help us recognize the choices we're already making and the power we already possess, rather than encouraging dependence on their authority. Zen teacher Charlotte Joko Beck said, "We are always in choice, even when we think we're not." The bird in the student's hands represents all the moments when we convince ourselves we have no options, no power, no responsibility. But consciousness always involves choice, and choice always involves responsibility. Look deeply at a current challenge in your life. Where are you waiting for someone else to provide answers, solutions, or direction? What would change if you fully recognize that the power to shape the outcome is already in your hands? This doesn't mean you have control over all external circumstances, but you always have choice about how you respond. The Buddha taught, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Every thought, every intention, every action is like the student's choice with the bird, an opportunity to create life or death, beauty or suffering, wisdom or ignorance. The answer is always in our hands. Tonight, as you consider the various situations in your life where you seek guidance or feel powerless, can you sense the truth the Master was pointing to? Can you feel the weight of the choices you carry every day, not as a burden, but as the fundamental dignity of conscious existence? As the Buddha observed, no one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. The bird flies free, not because of the teacher's wisdom, but because of the student's choice. In recognizing our own power to choose life over death, compassion over cruelty, truth over deception, we discover that the answer to every important question has always been in our hands. A wealthy merchant had built a vast fortune through years of shrewd business dealings and careful investments. His family owned multiple properties, controlled trade routes, and wielded considerable influence throughout the region. As he aged, the merchant became increasingly concerned about ensuring his family's continued prosperity long after his death. Having heard of a renowned Zen master whose wisdom was said to transcend ordinary understanding, the merchant decided to commission something special. He approached the master with a request that seemed both generous and practical. "Master," he said, bowing respectfully while displaying his finest robes and jewelry, "I would like to commission you to write something profound that will encourage the prosperity of my family for generations to come. Something that my descendants can treasure and draw inspiration from long after I am gone. Money is no object. I simply want the most powerful blessing you can provide." The master listened quietly to this request, observing the merchant's obvious wealth and the sincere concern he felt for his family's future. After a moment of contemplation, he nodded his agreement and asked for a large piece of the finest paper. The merchant watched eagerly as the master prepared his brush and ink with ceremonial care. He expected elaborate calligraphy, perhaps ancient wisdom about accumulating wealth, or powerful mantras that would ensure his family's continued success in business and life. The master's reputation suggested that whatever he wrote would be both beautiful and profound. With simple, elegant strokes, the master wrote just 7 words. "Father dies, son dies, grandson dies." When the merchant read what had been written, his face flushed red with anger and disbelief. This was not at all what he had expected or requested. "Master!" he exclaimed, his voice rising with indignation. "I asked you to write something that would bring happiness and prosperity to my family for generations. Instead, you give me this depressing message about death. Why do you give me something so depressing like this?" The master looked at him with calm, compassionate eyes and began to explain the deeper meaning behind what might appear to be a morbid prediction. "Consider carefully what I have written," the master said gently. "If your son should die before you, this would bring unbearable grief to your family. Parents are not meant to outlive their children. Such loss creates a wound that never fully heals. If your grandson should die before your son, this too would bring tremendous sorrow to your family and disrupt the natural flow of life." The merchant began to listen more carefully, sensing there was something deeper in the master's words than he had initially understood. "But if your family continues, generation after generation, with each death occurring in the natural order I have described, this represents the ideal course of life. This is the pattern that brings the least suffering and the greatest harmony. This natural succession, where each generation has time to live fully before passing responsibility to the next, is true happiness and genuine prosperity." As the Buddha taught, of all things, impermanence is the most sacred. This ancient wisdom illuminates why accepting the natural order of life and death creates more genuine peace than any accumulation of material wealth ever could. Why do we resist the fundamental reality that all things, including our own lives and those of our loved ones, are temporary? Zen Buddhism reveals that much of our suffering comes from fighting against impermanence rather than finding peace within its natural rhythms. The merchant's initial understanding of prosperity was limited to material accumulation, wealth, property, and influence that could be passed down through generations. But the master pointed to a deeper form of prosperity, the blessing of a family that experiences life and death in harmony with natural order rather than in tragic disruption of it. Consider how different our relationship to mortality becomes when we see death not as failure or tragedy, but as the natural conclusion of a life fully lived. The master's blessing wasn't morbid. It was recognition that the greatest gift we can wish for our families is that each generation has the opportunity to live completely before making way for the next. This teaching also reveals the limitation of trying to control the future through accumulation of resources. The merchant wanted to ensure his family's prosperity through external means, but the master suggested that true prosperity comes from accepting life's fundamental conditions rather than attempting to transcend them. In our modern context, we often measure family success by material legacy, the wealth we leave behind, the properties we pass down, the financial security we provide. But how often do we consider the emotional and spiritual legacy of a family that understands and accepts life's natural rhythms? The Buddha said, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence." This teaching reminds us that even while we work diligently to create good conditions for ourselves and our loved ones, the ultimate prosperity comes from understanding and accepting the temporary nature of all achievements. Look deeply at your own hopes and fears for your family's future. How much energy goes toward trying to control outcomes that are ultimately beyond our control? What would it mean to wish for your loved ones not immunity from life's natural processes, but wisdom and acceptance in meeting them? The master's blessing contains a profound recognition. The alternative to natural order is not preservation, but tragedy. By wishing for the normal sequence of generational transition, he was wishing for the absence of the premature deaths and disrupted cycles that create the deepest forms of suffering. Tonight, as you consider what you most hope for your family and loved ones, can you remember the master's wisdom? Can you see that the greatest blessing might not be the avoidance of mortality, but the grace to experience it in harmony with natural order? Buddha's wisdom reminds us, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. The master's 7 words brought the merchant face to face with the ultimate reality that no amount of wealth can change: our participation in the endless cycle of birth, life, and death that characterizes all existence. True prosperity lies not in escaping this cycle, but in dancing gracefully within it. In the bustling capital city, where merchants haggled in crowded marketplaces and scholars debated in tea houses, the renowned Zen master Bankei had completed another period of teaching at one of the great temples. Known throughout the region for his profound insight and ability to point students directly toward their Buddha nature, Bankei maintained a simple practice of traveling between temples, offering instruction wherever sincere students gathered. As the master prepared to depart for his next destination, carefully folding his few possessions into a traveling bundle, a well-dressed gentleman approached him with urgent politeness. The man's fine silk robes and careful manner suggested someone accustomed to moving in aristocratic circles, likely a retainer or aide to one of the noble families that supported the temple. "Venerable master," the gentleman said, bowing deeply, "I come with a request from the Baron, a man of great learning and sincere interest in your teachings. He has heard of your wisdom and wishes desperately to meet with you personally, but urgent matters have detained him today." Would you consider postponing your departure by 1 day so that he might have the honor of studying with you tomorrow?" Bankei, despite his eagerness to reach the next temple where students awaited him, recognized the genuine need in the request. The path of a teacher required flexibility and compassion, even when inconvenient. "Of course," he replied simply. "I shall remain 1 more day." The master unpacked his bundle and settled back into the temple quarters, spending the evening in quiet meditation and preparation for what he anticipated would be a meaningful encounter with a sincere seeker. He had met many nobles over the years who approached Zen with genuine humility despite their worldly status, and he looked forward to offering whatever guidance might be helpful. The next morning arrived with clear skies and the sound of temple bells calling the community to meditation. Bankei waited in his designated meeting room as the appointed time approached. But instead of the Baron himself, the same well-dressed gentleman appeared again, this time with obvious embarrassment written across his features. "Master," the man began, his voice heavy with apology, "I bring regrettable news. The Baron was called away on urgent business that could not be delayed, matters of state that demanded his immediate attention. However, he has not forgotten his desire for your teaching. He has asked me to serve as his representative, to receive your instruction on his behalf, and carry your wisdom back to him faithfully." The gentleman paused, clearly hoping this arrangement would prove acceptable. "The Baron's specific question concerns the nature of mind itself. He wishes to understand, what is the true nature of consciousness, and how can one realize it directly? If you would share your teaching on this matter, I promise to convey every word exactly as you speak it." Bankei listened to this request with gentle attention, his expression remaining calm and compassionate. When the gentleman finished speaking, the master sat quietly for a moment, as if considering not just the question, but the entire situation, the absent seeker, the well-intentioned messenger, and the profound impossibility of what was being asked. Finally, Bankei spoke with characteristic simplicity and directness. "This matter of Zen is difficult to convey even through direct question and answer, between teacher and student meeting face to face. It becomes all the more difficult, indeed impossible, to transmit through a messenger, no matter how sincere or capable that messenger might be." Having delivered this response, the master said nothing more. He simply sat in silence, embodying the very teaching he had just articulated. The gentleman waited, perhaps expecting elaboration or alternative suggestions, but none came. Eventually, finding himself speechless and somewhat confused, the gentleman bowed politely and withdrew from the temple. The Buddha once said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." This profound truth reveals itself in Bankei's gentle but firm refusal to reduce Zen wisdom to a message that could be carried by proxy. Spiritual awakening cannot be transmitted second-hand because it is not information, but transformation. Why do we often approach spiritual learning as if it were academic knowledge that can be collected and conveyed through intermediaries? Zen Buddhism teaches that awakening is not a concept to be understood, but a reality to be directly experienced. Like the taste of water to someone who is thirsty, it cannot be adequately described. It must be experienced firsthand. The Baron's question about the nature of consciousness reveals our typical approach to spiritual inquiry. We want to understand awareness intellectually, to grasp it conceptually, to possess it as knowledge. But consciousness cannot be made into an object of study because it is the very subject doing the studying. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The seeing itself is what you are trying to see. Consider how often throughout your day you might approach spiritual wisdom as information to be collected, rather than truth to be embodied. We read books about meditation instead of meditating. We study descriptions of enlightenment instead of investigating our present experience. We seek answers about the nature of mind instead of directly examining what we call mind right now. Zen Master Dogen taught, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. This paradox points to the heart of why spiritual transmission requires direct engagement. The self that wants to understand Buddhism intellectually is the very construction that must be seen through. This seeing through happens not through accumulating knowledge, but through intimate investigation of immediate experience. The messenger in the story represents our own tendency to approach awakening indirectly. We want to understand consciousness from a safe distance, maintaining the illusion that we are separate observers studying an object called awareness. But awareness is what we are, not what we have. It cannot be possessed, understood, or transmitted because we are expressions of it. Bankei's silence after his brief explanation was itself a teaching. In Zen, silence often conveys what words cannot. The gaps between thoughts, the space between breaths, the awareness in which all experiences arise. These cannot be captured in language, but can be directly recognized when we stop trying to grasp them conceptually. This doesn't mean spiritual teaching is impossible or that teachers serve no purpose. Rather, it means that authentic teaching points students toward their own direct experience, rather than providing second-hand descriptions of someone else's realization. The teacher's role is not to deliver enlightenment, but to create conditions where students might recognize what they already are. Tonight, as you experience the simple fact of being conscious, aware of these words, aware of your body, aware of the space in which thoughts and sensations appear, can you investigate this awareness directly rather than through concepts? Can you be present to your experience rather than trying to understand it through someone else's descriptions? As the Buddha taught, work out your own salvation with diligence. The path to freedom cannot be walked by proxy. It requires your own feet, your own breath, your own willingness to look directly at what you have always been but perhaps never clearly seen. Tonight, as we draw this gentle exploration to a close, can you feel how the ease you've discovered isn't something you had to create or earn, but something that was always here, waiting beneath the surface of your busy thoughts? Can you sense that the calm you've touched tonight doesn't live only in these teachings, but rests quietly in your own awareness, ready to welcome you home whenever you remember to look? The Buddha taught us that you only lose what you cling to. Taking this wisdom to heart, remember that the peace and freedom you seek don't come from getting life to behave the way you want, but from loosening your grip on how you think things should be. They flow naturally when you stop demanding that this moment be different from what it is. Throughout our time together, each teaching has pointed to the same simple truth. That struggle comes not from life's challenges, but from fighting against them. That freedom isn't found by controlling your experience, but by changing how you relate to it. And that true rest emerges when you finally stop trying so hard to fix everything. As you prepare to rest, notice that these ancient insights haven't shown you some far-off destination, but have revealed what's possible right here in this very moment. In the stillness that follows, feel how your breath moves more easily now, how your body settles more naturally, how your heart rests without needing to defend or demand anything. These teachings remind us that wisdom isn't hidden in complicated practices or lofty ideas. It lives in the simple recognition that you don't have to be at war with your own experience. Tonight, you've tasted that recognition, the relief that comes when fighting finally stops and flowing begins. As you return to your daily life, carry with you not just the stories we've shared, but the quiet knowing they've awakened, that peace is always possible, that resistance is always optional, and that rest is always available when you stop pushing it away. May this understanding stay close, offering comfort in difficult times and deepening the joy you find in simple moments. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us on this journey at Sleepy Monk.